episode 2, It's Killing Me podcast.
You're listening to It's Killing Me. I'm Shane Kenny. After our first episode, many people asking, who are you? Why are you talking about these conversations and topics that make me uncomfortable? Well, myself and my producers are many things. Professionally, we are artists, performers, and have worked in education for multiple years, both previously and currently. Personally, we have all been diagnosed with at least one mental condition and have experienced trauma in different forms. In our mental health journeys, we have sought help from both conventional and unconventional resources from which we have had good and bad experiences. We wanted an informative yet practical source of information. We noticed so many people were being helped by doctors who only studied the conditions but didn't know what it was like to live with them day to day, while others were intimidated by the beauty and affluence of the wellness industry. A lot of us got more help from subreddits and late night video calls than from the current mental health system. Laughter isn't the best medicine, but sometimes it's the only medicine. We here at It's Killing Me are not trying to cure any mental conditions. We are trying to get better at understanding mental conditions through history and get better at living with them through humor. Cue the music. Today we are going to be unpacking bipolar disorder. And we are joined by our guests, Sun Luu and Alyssa Aguilos. Sun Luu is a poet, singer, rapper, teacher. He just performed a big event for the California Endowment. Sun Luu is also featured on Camping's most recent EP, Impending Bloom, which I listen to at least once a week on Spotify.
Hey.
Alyssa Aguilos is a filmmaker, voice actor, and lead event organizer for the Twilight Showcase and Art Fest. Is there anything I'm leaving out, Alyssa?
Oh, I have a lot in my life, but that's all we need to talk about today.
Cool. And we
I'm
got,
a substitute teacher now, I guess.
Yeah.
like I said, education professionals involved in every step of the process. Boom.
Teacher.
We are also joined by our kick-ass producer, Phil. So, let's jump into the questions. When were you first diagnosed?
I was first diagnosed in the summer of 2020, like right in the peak of the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah.
At first they thought I had depression when I was 13, and then they put me on antidepressants, and then I found out I had bipolar at 15. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, before you got that formal diagnosis, did you notice you were dealing with something that other people weren't?
I don't think it's something that I was aware of. Like, did you experience that? Where, like, did you know what was kind of happening, or?
Yeah, but I just thought, I did know what was happening. I did have a lot of, like, what I would describe now as mania and, like, anger episodes, but I just, like, thought that was because of my family.
Did you want to run that one back? No? You're good with the sirens and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, like, no, I definitely heard them.
We're in a hectic world.
Just
and
checking.
Yeah.
Producer
I mean, like,
Ryan.
now
You know
that
what?
you
We'll-
said
we'll
something,
do it.
like,
We'll do it on the scene with ambulance drivers and
Well-
talk about their mental health.
That's funny. Sorry. I was
So, back to the sun of my life.
we'll segue back to that afterwards and talk about their mental health.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I like all the experiences that I had that were like erratic or not normal. I was at a time when I was like repressing a lot of my emotions, and I thought it was just like a me problem. In a way, it was a me thing, but just not in the ways that I had always thought about it before, prior to being diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
But similar to you, I did have, I was being checked on for like depression, PTSD, and it took it took some more experiences with me and my therapist and the psychiatrist to like find out like, no, actually this is more so bipolar. And just to put an age to it, I believe I was 24. I was 24 when I got it officially. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
you
a lot more recent.
Yeah, and that's why I ask these questions, because it's not like you start dealing with it when you're diagnosed. It's the evolution and the things that happen in your life that make you realize, no, something was off there. I wasn't feeling myself,
Right.
even though it was me
Yeah.
doing all that.
Yeah. I think it's sort of interesting to think about it, because I was always like a very extra person. Like I've always been an extra kid.
Oh yeah.
So like I've just been a bubbly ball of energy since I was born. So the thing that kind of tipped them off to be like, something's weird, is when I actually got depressed. So they were just like, you're not being your version of normal.
Yeah.
So, and then I think from my, POV, the thing that kind of made me think that something was off is I kept constantly being asked, like, are you good? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
nothing's wrong.
I'm the life of the party.
It's amazing. And just
Yeah.
like, so there's like, no, you're acting like you're on drugs. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm high on life.
Yeah,
Like,
straight. I'd say that all the
I'm
time.
high on life.
Yeah.
Like, no, something's up.
Right.
So, it's just something that once you kind of step outside of yourself and you're like, is something the matter? Then I think that's when I figured out, like, oh, maybe I am experiencing something different than everybody else is.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of self-reflection, humility, and finding your own baselines in your head of like, oh, these are the decisions and range I like to be in, but something about me, I was down here being in my shell, or out there being way too extra. So, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about bipolar disorder?
In your guys' opinion.
Yeah. That we're insane. That we're crazy. You know.
I think the speed at which bipolar like episodes happen, or just like if you see a person on TV, like the main tip off that they're bipolar is they're like changing every second.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it happens.
Yeah.
What's your cycle like? Because I think my cycle's like 2 weeks, kind of 2-ish weeks.
Like for the main
The
kind
up
of
and
mood
like
swings?
if you're up and down and then you get back.
Oh, for me, I can. It's like 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, mine sucks. Because I'm like
1 month up, 1 month down.
I know, right? It's like, oh, I'm having such a great, like, productive, amazing, like 2 to 3 weeks, and like by the like 2.5 week mark, I'm like, oh no, the other shoe's gonna drop.
You're looking at at your clock, going, I have to get it all in the next week.
Yeah.
I wish I could time it that way, because you don't know what's gonna trigger you.
My mood swing is the time span of like, a period, I guess.
See, okay, that is so funny that you say
if
that.
you could
Yeah.
As
talk
a
about
woman.
getting into
Yeah, I
Because-
know. I had to look at you when I said
No,
that. It's like,
because-
am I right or wrong?
No, okay, so yes and no, because as a woman, this is the funny thing, right? I was gonna get into this later, but because I was on my mood stabilizers for so long, I didn't know what period SADs were until I got off of my meds. So just so that the podcast knows, I've actually been self-regulating my emotions for since 2016. So it's been, oh my gosh, it's been like, it's about to be 10 years. Sorry, that's just really weird for me.
No,
'cause I
emotional
didn't-
regulation is the goal on this show.
Yeah, no, I was on my mood stabilizers for like years before that, almost 10 years before that. So it was a whole thing. But for that 10 years, I did not know what period SADs felt like. So I was afraid that when I was getting into like normal emotions as a woman, I was like, fuck, am I getting depressed again? Am I just gonna have to stop my whole life again and just, no, you're a lady and this shit happens. Like, you're just like, oh, It's probably my period.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that.
But to speak to that, like it's a passive reactive kind of thing to our emotions, and how I've seen bipolar being depicted in shows and even in a lot of like the students that I see perform at the competitions, like for speech and debate, when they have a bipolar character, they go for like a very like active, aggressive, as if they are aware of their emotions and using it to their advantage. Like there was a student at a speech and debate competition that I ranked relatively low because of how like inappropriately he had like made bipolar out to be from like a personal lens. He was going like really like you like it was like I guess like he played a female character
Oh God.
Yeah, who was like manipulating her partner, and he was like, oh, you know I get angry, I'm so sorry that I got angry at you, you know I didn't mean to, and like, but it's just things you did just frustrated me. And it's sort of like
it's not that.
Yeah, it's not that.
Kind of hilarious that someone's like, we need a adolescent boy to play a bipolar woman respectably. I'm just thinking the teacher that assignment girl had to have done it as a joke, because it's not like women are going to feel, or the girls at your school are going to feel better or like him more after this.
Right.
And also this is, it's like the teacher in you has to call him in. The teacher in you has to call him in, but the like artist and dude in you wants to fight him.
Right. Well, it was like a one-person play, so he was playing multiple characters. He played like the male character in it too.
Oh, it was a one-person play.
So wait. So, was this his idea? Like, was
yes?
Oh, okay.
Well, because his specific event is originally written, so it's originally written material that he scripted up.
So you're not just saying that this was his idea. This was 100% his idea.
Yeah, basically. With some coach's help. Which I imagine, because like it's a high school event, so it's the coach's help.
Okay.
So that also plays into a larger scheme of things.
So
yeah.
So what? It was like
so
Matt
it's
Rice
both of them.
bipolar.
They're the cause. They're the problem.
Yeah, and for it to be okayed and to be displayed at like a big tournament. It had to go through a couple of eyes at least, considering it is a student in high school.
And nobody said nothing.
And nobody said nothing. And so I wanted to, in my judge's ballot,
Daredevil
say
was
something
reviewing
about
it.
There's, it's because that's the portrayal that's in
that.
the
Yeah,
like,
that's the stigma.
That when you hear bipolar, that's something that you immediately imagine because of television, because of
and that's something we're going to get into is the specific definitions, because that was like one thing when people were making that explanation where I'm like, I'm depressed, but I have manic moments, and when I see people doing that, it's like my manic moments last 2 hours tops. Then my ego's going to deflate. I'm going to want to hide in the corner. And whereas like in the research I've done with bipolar, it's like it's at least 7 days.
At least.
And talk about the luck you can have of a relationship goal is that your bipolar cycles line up with their menstrual cycles. Just be like, babe, in a week, it's like, I know, I got the snacks and the movies, like just. We don't have to leave the house, like.
You need your oxytocin.
Yeah.
So playing off of that last question of what's the most irritating portrayal of bipolar disorder in film and TV? Like, what movie or show where you're just like, I hate everyone involved in this?
I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, because I've just kind of ignored a bunch of them, and like I don't register, but I only know I know one good one, even though the show's not necessarily that good.
Okay, so the next question, maybe this is a better one. Who's your favorite portrayal of a bipolar character?
Ben in Ozark.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Mine was what is her name? The girl in Homeland.
I haven't watched.
I don't watch either show.
I know of the show.
Okay.
It's
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen them, but I know that the actors on that show are pretty good.
Yes.
But yeah, go for it.
Oh, you had yours first.
Okay. No, but I say yes and this. Go for it. You got it. I want to hear. I'm very interested.
Well, so I think the thing that strikes me about it, and I haven't watched most of the show, but I got to watch some with my dad. But when he found out that the character has bipolar, like the same bipolar that I have. By the way, there's two main diagnoses, which is something we should mention for the podcast. Like, this is only one side.
Yeah,
of the
we'll go into that in
But
like
anyways.
the present day findings and where we're at today.
Right. The in Homeland there is a scene, and I vividly remember it because I had similar experiences. But she's trying to explain a timeline. This show kind of centers around like a girl who works for Homeland Security, and she's really good at her job, but she also has bipolar, and it gets in the way a little bit. I don't know if that's the whole thing, but it's part of what I took from it. She's like trying to make this multicolored timeline, but to everybody else, she's like, "My world for a green pen! Just give me something. I need something green to write this down." And she's like having this full-on like aggressive episode, and everybody's kind of like trying to hold her down, and she's just trying to write shit down. And then her like wall to wall, there's like pink papers, blue papers, green papers, just like everything looks so scattered. It looks like if you made a Jackson Pollock painting but with sticky notes. And you're like, what the am I looking at, right? So, and then her mentor realizes, you're like, hold on, what if I put this in the colors of a rainbow? And the timeline is just like multi-layered and makes fucking sense, and just like her mind is organized in a different way. And then my dad goes, "Is that how it's like in your brain?"
Wow.
I was like,
Oh, that's beautiful when other
To have
folks can
your
recognize
parent
it.
acknowledge your thought process like that must have
Yeah.
been great.
Oh.
I was just like, that's exactly
Just
how it feels.
The kid in you like,
sometimes.
ooh, ooh, ooh.
That's
That-
yeah.
That's so much more wholesome than how my parents like reacted
Yeah.
when they
Oh,
found out I had bipolar.
let's hear a bad story. Come
Oh
on.
no! It was like when I revealed that I had bipolar or I was diagnosed with it. My dad was like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Okay.
I was like, what?"
And this question's for later, but have you ever been gaslighted because you were open with someone about your disorder?
Oh, I had been gaslit like before I had bipolar, but then like afterwards, I don't know. I feel like I've had like a good. I did so much research into bipolar after I was diagnosed that as soon as someone tried me, that I would like check them immediately.
Yeah.
So in terms of post-diagnosis, I haven't had those experiences. Thank goodness.
Yeah, because
I've
I
been able
had
to
that
set
where
my
I was like,
boundaries with
oh,
it.
I'm going to be open about my depression and therapy. And then people would do me wrong and I would be understandably frustrated and be like, you know, you really need to go to therapy. This is a depressive episode. And I'm like,
You don't know depressive
Yeah.
episode.
and I'm like, you're about to see an anger episode.
Yeah. I do take it back. My parents have actively been misunderstanding me, and have
Like
been
on
like
purpose?
just they ignorant. They're ignorant, and so they've tried to convince me. It's like that's that's just you when you're angry. That's just you. It's like no, it's not me. It's a consequence, a symptom of a mood swing I have. Since then, I've been educating, and they've been a lot more patient and receiving. It's like oh, he's just going through something right now. Let's give him space. And like he'll like self-regulate, he'll come back, and then I do, and then so now they've been able to, like see me for the symptoms and not like conflate that as being like oh that's just who I am.
Yeah. Because sometimes that has happened where they're just like, oh, you are your symptoms, or it's just like this is, and to be honest, I personally. Sometimes I have to like separate myself from like to be outside of myself a little bit because there's just too much that I have experienced where I'm like, why did I fucking do that? Like, I think about like my worst episodes and I don't know how aware I am of my action. Like in the moment, you're like, this makes perfect sense. I'll definitely bike in a prom dress to a karate studio and like. Do karate because that's how I feel right now. This
Wendy
is right
Wu,
to do.
Wendy Wu, homecoming warrior. Get it,
Oh
Alyssa.
my god!
Like how,
Yeah.
like in my mind that made perfect sense in that moment because I was just following the serotonin.
I hate the advice that people give me, which is, dude, just trust your gut.
No,
No,
absolutely not.
when you are mentally ill, the
That's
gut
not-
is the last thing.
not
you
the right
Yeah,
advice.
my gut is
Yeah.
telling me something that is going to be completely detrimental
Yeah.
to
In
what
the-
the situation
In
is.
the opposite, like I'm so glad that I have my own self-preservation like in check. Like it's really high, thank God, because there'll be times where I'll just be like on the second story of like an apartment building, and then there's like a pool. I'm like, wouldn't it be tight if I just jumped? Like,
that would
no,
that would be
don't
more
do that.
that would mean you're behaving like a guy.
I don't know.
But speaking of a guy whose behaviors that I like really saw myself represented in, Ben from Ozark, in this one, like, it was just one monologue scene, the taxi scene, where I felt like I felt everything this guy was saying. And that's what made it important for me to like see bipolar being depicted well in media. Was what it's just a monologue of him sitting in a taxi, and it's the start of a scene in the episode where he's just venting to the taxi driver, being like, I've never been the type of guy to do what anyone tells me, right? Like they say, do this, be in a certain like box. I'm not the type of person to be in that box, especially if I know what made that box. And he's just going on this rant, this and the story segues into different other stories, and that's something that I like relate to. He's bouncing off, going tangentially into one thing, and he's talking about now, like being like a veteran, this homeless guy, in the this homeless guy that's laying on the sidewalk, and he relates to that guy, and he's going in deep in the story, and you see his tears welling up. And he's thinking, you know, like, and he relates to the guy. He's like, he's probably, you know, like missed that click. And I remember how my brain was before the thing that ruined my brain.
Oh.
And you just, and I was crying at this scene about that click, because I used to have that click, and now
you don't know where that is.
Now I have moments where I trace back, and he speaks on this as a monologue. I have moments where I am that guy who had it all together. And then he comes back down now to where he is. Yeah. And he's like, well, that's just me, man. How's your day been?
Yeah, like
How's
that.
your... Oh, but his significant thing about the implication of it. He asked the taxi driver, well, how's your day been? Which implies in the scene, all the taxi driver did was, hey, man, how's it going? And that whole monologue that lasted for 10 minutes was just in response to that one question.
Shoot.
That's like talking to Go.
Yeah.
I like what you said there about the click. Like, do you have that moment where you're like, you remember what the neurodivergence started? Do you all have like the day or the scene or the like, oh, there was something happened and the frequency in my head shift and it never went back?
Right.
Because I want to tie in, like, you said the click, and you said, you asked if you are your symptoms. If you could choose to not have bipolar disorder, would you? Or do you consider it a part of your identity that doesn't need to be fixed? Because with mental conditions, a lot of people have mixed relationships with that, of whether it's a part of themselves or a thing they deal with.
I've learned to take it in stride, I think, because it has its advantages. Like the way that I've explained to like me, and we still have. We used to. I was about to say we used to. No, we still have a bipolar support group that we like just check in, and I send memes to every once in a while. But the man, I'm losing my train of thought, which is so funny because that happens. Run that question back.
So
the
if you could choose to not have bipolar disorder, would you, or do you consider it a part of yourself that doesn't need to be changed, fixed, or treated?
Yeah, the thing that I say about that is one of the biggest advantages with bipolar is you just have the capacity to feel a lot more, and that's not to compare anything, but like to feel more than a lot of people. So the graphic, if there was one, that I would imagine is like kind of, you think of like a timeline, kind of like, I guess like the most relevant example would be like in Loki, where there's just like here. There's like one main timeline or something, and then it goes up and down or whatever. Timeline. Yeah, like the sacred timeline, and then there's like limits to the timeline or something. Right. But instead of like it's straying too far away from the main timeline, it's like there's a happiness bar or whatever. Like you can make it whatever, but the happiness bar and then like the depressive bar, which is the quote unquote normal limits of emotion that most people feel. We go way outside of that. Like at least for bipolar 1, we have way more manic episodes than depressive episodes. But we still have like if like your meter, if everybody's meter is like 1 and -1, we could be like +5 and -5, and that happens every, like, the timeline is for us is like at least 7 days, like you said. For me, it's 2 weeks and of like being in a cycle. Sometimes it differs because something might trigger you. Other times, like, you could be at such a high where something that would have like changed somebody else's normal mood, like it's like it's like Superman and his bullets. Like, you don't, nothing hits you. You're just like, oh, that shit don't bother me like at all. Like,
yeah. Alan Richardson, who plays Jack Reacher from the Reacher series, like, he has bipolar, and he described it very well, in that, like, folks who have bipolar should actually be considered unipolar, because we're really only in whatever emotion it is at its purest at the time, right? So, like, if I'm happy, I'm the embodiment of happiness. If I'm depressed, I am the embodiment of depression. Because some people can, like, you know, like, have someone get, you know, could just be driving home from work, feeling relaxed, feeling good about a good day, get cut off and be like, whoa, what the heck? Hey, I wish he didn't do that. Whereas, you know, for me, it'd be like, what the? Why? You knew that I was going to go that lane and you cut me off, you know? Like,
and then your day's bad.
And then my day's bad.
This is why not everyone should have a gun.
Right, I know. I can't. I cannot.
This is how we get dead poplars on the freeway.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, I'm only ever like one emotion, like 100%. Like, I can't. I'm never really half-assed in any emotion I am. And to speak back to your question of, like, you know, would I still have it? Like, if I had a choice, you know, would I still have bipolar? That's a tough question, because even I have, like, a bipolar response to it. Like, I hate it, and I love it. I hate it.
You're gonna call me up later tonight. Cut the episode. I don't feel the same way anymore.
Hilarious.
Right.
Well, somebody, my karate teacher, my sensei, he also had bipolar, and he noticed it in me when I was having, like, my episodes as I was going through my process with it, and he was like, yeah, it can suck. But it has its superpowers. Like, it makes me a better writer. It makes me in tune with other people's emotions, because, like, the extremes and lengths that we experience internally, to some extent, are what everybody experiences, just on a deeper level. And, like, maybe you have to take it there sometimes when you're writing poetry or writing, you know, movies or something like that. Like, there's certain things, it expands our empathy for people, you know? There's no... If you have the ability to experience, like, these depths of emotion, then you actually have the, you know, you can think about all of those different pinpoints all within that range.
Yeah, like, neurodivergence, we're the ethical canaries. If we're getting feely about something, it means we're probably going in a bad direction societally. Like, no, the bipolar and depressed people are chirping. We should probably stop the genocide.
Yeah.
So... You segue great for my next question is, how does your art and performance help you cope with being bipolar?
I got it's a twofold thing, because I'm a writer and performer. So on the writing part of it, so I've told this to my homies before, and I'll bring it up to this discussion here. But, like, I always, like, tell folks now, like, I am a great thinker. I'm a very deep thinker. And I'm a very hard worker. I'm just never at the same time. And that plays into my writing. When I am in my moments of deep depression, it does give me the opportunity to ask questions, because I am in a period of a lot of doubt. Like, what's going on? Like, you know, what am I becoming? Who am I? Like, am I good enough here? Am I bad enough here? Did I do that there? Writing, you know, poetry or just diary entries give me an outlet to explore those thoughts, and I make peace with it. I embrace the thoughts that do come out, and then I come up with a lot of, like, amazing answers from the exploration of it through writing. And then performing after those words are written, gives me the outlet to explore those emotions again, and to honor them like full-fledgedly. Given that I experience bipolar, and I get to be in every performance that I'm in. It's super fun for me, really, to like have a healthy outlet to express those emotions authentically, and have it be art, have it be done productively.
Yeah.
So that's what art has allowed for me.
Yeah. For me, I feel like it sort of expresses itself in a similar way where, like, when I'm in my downs, I call them my downs. It's a time to analyze and think. Like, it's almost like time slows down a little bit. Like when I'm in my depressive episodes, it's just time feels like it takes forever. And now that it takes forever, I can sit in a lot of my emotions more. I used to hate being sad because I don't know if y'all experience this, but like sadness is just like not just negative, but it's almost like you should never be sad if you're a normal person.
Right.
Like, no, sadness is as I've grown into my adulthood, like sadness is a regular ass emotion. Like nobody should be shamed for feeling sad, which is like, if growing up a very happy baby, like that's when people, again, like my depressive episode was the thing that kind of like kicked off the whole, like, we should check you out for stuff because you're not being normal. Your normal is happy, so you should fix that.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because it's always the people like over 45 who are telling you to be happy. It's like, you're more miserable than me and you think you're fine.
Yeah,
Like,
I understand it.
I mean, look, I'll say this, like, as someone who has been like diagnosed with just depression.
Yeah, we're Team D over here. They're Team BD.
Like, you guys, I'm like, hearing that you guys get highs, I'm like,
Right?
so jealous. Like, I wake up for a lot of, I want to say from like 14 to 22. 14 to 22, I lived by one motto, that my mornings couldn't be happy. I couldn't have a good morning. If I wanted to have a good afternoon, I could only have one. Like, if I had a good morning, then when I got home, my afternoon was absolute dog shit. But if I
Very
had
Catholic of you.
Oh, I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, that's
Catholic guilt.
and if I had a terrible morning, like if nothing went right, people were upset with me, I would have a better afternoon. And I had enough experience by that point to be like, no, that's true.
That's you were going off of like your own evidence kind of thing.
Yeah. I was like, I almost went out of my way of self-sabotage. Like, I know now that that's just spiraling. Like, I spiral. Like, when I get depressed, I spiral. And sometimes it takes somebody to tell me, like, hey, man, you're spiraling. For me to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I am spiraling.
and because you're an intelligent, like, that's the problem with people who are like argumentatively intelligent with depression, is that we will rationalize it.
You're right.
So
yeah, and that happens to bipolar people. It just happens every however many weeks.
I like mine's just months at a time though. Like, luckily I've been like really self-regulated. Like, things have been on, like, in my, for, like, you guys talk about cycles. I talk that I do actually have a cycle for my depression, and usually it lasts from about the beginning of the year, so from January all the way up until about August, and then like fall and winter, best times of years for best time of the year for me. But then like everything else is
you got like a seasonal component.
Yeah.
Mine's just steady year round.
Oh,
Sort of like a planet that doesn't have seasons.
No, like the seasons where everybody's like, oh, it's summer, I'm going to go and do like all my fun shit. No, I
Well,
do that.
you don't go and do fun summer shit because you're depressed. I don't go do fun summer shit because I'll die if I go out in the sun. So before we get into the timeline, is the computer good on battery?
Yes.
Cool. Got the charger. Let me move the charger over there. Just
I mean, okay.
is it? Unless it's like.
I can pause it. We can pause now.
Let's jump into this timeline. Anyone want to guess when our story starts?
No.
No.
1863.
1863.
1960. Way later.
I'm sorry. You Googled this.
No, I was tempted to Google.
So you on spot? Like,
But
So you just on the spot you guessed 1863.
exactly.
No,
Yeah.
No,
I was hoping. Did I land it?
You were very close.
oh.
Sometime in 300 BC.
Ah! Damn, you got us. You got us.
Talking about being gaslit.
Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, noticed many people suffering from melancholia were also great artists. Melancholia is the blanket term used in ancient and medieval times for different mental conditions. Even in ancient and medieval times, they noticed the sad and restless people were the most entertaining.
True.
Between 100 AD and 200 AD in Greece, Artaeus of Cappadocia took detailed notes on various health symptoms. This is where we get the first written account of the connection between mania and depression in a medical context. However, many centuries would pass before Artaeus of Cappadocia's important observation would be acknowledged. Mental health treatment in ancient and medieval times varied greatly. On the more humane side of the treatment spectrum, we have lithium. Bathing with lithium salts was an early form of treatment for people experiencing symptoms of mania and or depression.
So they used lithium even then?
Yeah,
Wild.
and that's the thing is like people with bipolar today are still using lithium.
It's true.
On the more aggressive side of the mental health treatment spectrum, we have religion. Religious dogmas interpreted mental conditions as demonic possessions. During ancient and medieval times, it was common for people with mental conditions to be executed.
Damn.
Due to this theologically blinded thinking.
I thought you were gonna. When I heard X, I thought you said exercise, like an exorcism, but
Yeah.
no, you said you went straight to killing,
No, yeah.
which I shouldn't be surprised by the church, but I figured.
You're not allowed to divorce, but you're allowed to execute those with mental disorders. It's fucking priorities, man.
Or just shelter them away in the hideaway room.
That's if you married for love. That's if you married for love. If you married for anything else, you're like, he's over here.
I have a question. Alyssa, son, were there ever a time when you were so manic or depressed that the clergy would have wanted to execute you?
That is so funny that you
Because,
say
like,
that.
my panic attacks when I was 6, I totally would have been executed.
So, actually, funny story about that. My, one of the things that set off my most manic episodes when I was in high school was a youth prayer rally because I was so hyped up and excited about it.
You're probably fearing for your life.
No. It was actually the opposite. But it's so funny because, like, I think I must have been in kind of in a depressive episode. This is when I was on antidepressants still. So, like, after they diagnosed me with depression, they put me on my happy pills, and then it was, like, summer of, I want to say, 2009, went to a youth group, and I was part of this youth group for a long time, but even after this, the youth prayer rally was so hype and so fun and, like, exciting that I shot up into space and, like, mentally, like, I was just like, this is the best thing ever! Go Jesus!
Jesus!
Like, and then people were like, yo, are you on crack? Because this is too much. My parents took me out of the private school that I was currently attending because they're just like, we have to 5150 you into a hospital because you had
too much fun at a prayer rally.
I had too much fun at a prayer rally.
You're just like,
yeah. So
if you were a white boy, they would have been like, do you want to be our reverend?
Maybe.
They give you a soft rock band and everything.
Yeah. Give me a guitar and I'll be at the front of this youth prayer rally.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a whole thing, and then, but it was way too much, and then I eventually like I had to transfer schools. I had to do independent study before going into like regular school again. So they probably would have kicked me out. They did kick me out of my Catholic school, or I don't know who said who. Somebody was like, maybe she shouldn't be so pressured to be in a place that she kind of doesn't like. Like, but we good?
No, you guys are fine.
Okay, so
Don't worry.
yeah, I needed to be taken out of that for a second.
Yeah.
Almost. Halfway.
Yeah.
For me, if any of the nearby neighbors saw me step out of the hut to just like scream into the wilderness as I had, in the pandemic, when I was really experiencing my anger episodes at its worst, they took me down, because I would just have to it would just be boiling too much, and the house felt too claustrophobic, and I'd step out and just I was like literally having a breakdown outside, to the point my pops had to come out and be like, quiet, they're gonna call the cops.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in today's terms, I'd just be shot by the cops, I think, if they saw me. Yeah.
There was this other time when I was younger that I
So same thing, executing the mentally ill.
It's still today.
The
It's
cops
still today.
the cops have picked up where the priest left off.
Oh yeah, basically.
Yeah. There's this other time that I remember where I don't know if I don't know if I fully remember it. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I remember coming out of like an anger episode when I was a lot younger. And everybody here knows that I love books, right? I love they're my treasure. I love them. I will, if somebody tries to come for me and my books, I would probably get one. I don't know. But I woke up out of this kind of fugue state. Pages ripped out, like covers torn off, just surrounded me, and I was just so frustrated. I don't remember why. I was so mad and frustrated that my library, my childhood library, like some of the staples of these books, just torn. And it was like waking up and being like, these are my most treasured possessions. What did I do?
I can relate. I've had that with like my temper, or with like mental breakdowns, where it's like, shit's gonna break. There might be a hole in the wall, and like now I have a whole like code red where I like lock my fingers, cross my legs, throw a weighted blanket on, medication, and then just because I write, and I feel it's like, you ever hold on to the sand when a wave is hitting you, so you don't get. That's what it felt like, where I'm like, the sand's eroding beneath me, but if I can hold on a little longer, I'm not going to get spat out on shore feeling like a mess.
I gotta do that too, because I'm sorry for those things that have happened where you've, even tarnished your own, prized possessions. For me, it's tarnishing myself. I have like some self-harm, I don't know what, like reactions, tics that will happen during an anger episode, where I'll be very inclined to hit myself, and I've actually had that since I was a kid. Actually,
I've done that too. Like, do you always punch in the same spot, or do you particularly go for like places where marks are going to be seen? Oh,
I go straight for the temple. I punch myself like this, and I actually did that like when I was a kid. That was the first time I actually did it. Was because I associated like bad behaviors with deserving to be punished, because my parents would hit me, and so in a way of like rectifying, I'd hit myself before they do.
Internalizing the punishment.
Yeah, it's like this, like I deserve this, so I should do it to myself. And so my dad's help with that when he saw me doing that is like, don't do that, hit your chest instead.
He's like redirecting your anger.
Don't give yourself a concussion. Fracture your sternum.
Yeah, exactly. Do it to the chest. Yeah, I know if you want to do it.
Oh man.
And then the cops would be like, "Let me help you."
Like no.
For me, like I have a similar reaction when I get like depressed. There are two things that happens. One, when I'm working myself out of my depression and I'm like coming back up, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing something that's like cool for me now. if anybody says anything, I just give it up. I stop. I give it up right immediately. Like I could be playing a video game and Kay could come over and be like, "Oh, you're gonna play a video game?" And I'd be like, "No, what's why? You wanna watch TV? You wanna do something else?" And she's like, "Stop doing that. I'm only asking." But my whole thing is like, if you brought it up, that means that you didn't want me to do it.
Right.
And
that's the association.
That's the association that I have with when people question what I'm doing, is that I shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like a paranoia, and like if you've experienced trauma, your brain's like searching for the next source of scrutiny.
Yeah, so I like when I know that people are upset with me, I self-isolate. Like I don't eat, I don't turn on TV, I don't do anything. I sit in a dark room for about like 2 hours. And I'll just be like, okay, this is my self-penance. And then and then when I'm working myself up, I felt like when I was younger, when I was working myself out of whenever I try to work myself out of my depression and someone said something, and even now sometimes, I'll just give it up. I'll find something else eventually. Like I can live with how sad I am right this moment until I find something else. So I'll just do something else. But
that's a good take on you. I like how measured and how aware you are of it, especially navigating it with your fiance. That shows a lot of like humility, self-awareness, and consideration.
Yeah, I made a short film about the experience. Like you said that you called it the click. Like that's the switch over point for you, right? Yeah. I call it brinking, like when you're at the edge of a cliff or like a building or something. Like this is the point emotionally where the drop off is. Like once I go over this, shit's gonna get bad. Like shit's gonna get wild or whatever. Like this is, and then the thing that I've learned, still learning, but like like the I'm better at now as an adult in comparison to when I was 15 is realizing like physiologically, chemically, like where is that breaking? Like where am I? How close am I? Can I back away from it? You know, like.
Yeah, and that's I feel like one of the biggest things with like mental illness is you're not trying to cure it. You're trying to read the red flags and signs before you get to that point. And these people in ancient times were probably just think about all the messed up stuff going on at the time, making all those symptoms worse, and then someone catches you at your worst moment and says, it's easier to kill you than to help you.
Yeah.
And but there was some good news. It only took 1,400 years for humans to be more humane. Because in 1621, Robert Burton published The Anatomy of Melancholy, which big deal for mental health.
The Anatomy of Melancholy.
Yeah.
I like that.
It sounds like a Smashing Pumpkins album. And some of the treatment recommendations for melancholy were music and dance. Alyssa, you dance. Like, are there things you're able to say with your body dancing that you can't with words?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's there's somatic therapies and like dance therapy's a huge thing now. If I'm very grateful to be mobile, that I can get all of these frustrations out. You guys know that I had a brother that has muscular dystrophy, and I'm very grateful for just realizing that I can dance and I can move and stuff like that. So there's just a lot, like I don't do it that much anymore because I think I've regulated a lot of my anger. But when I found out about crumping, like it's so funny being the only Asian girl who can kind of crump. Like it's like
that's
yeah,
fire.
It's hilarious. Like,
as a 90s and early 2000s kid, thank you. I feel older when I see people grinding, and I'm like, no, we're supposed to be popping and locking.
Yeah, like actually dance.
The closest I can get to like dance being catharsis is like mosh pits.
Yeah,
and I like the ska pits are more fun, more dancey. I went to some hardcore punk shows where I like broke my right shoulder, bad brains up there. Fun, hectic time. But even then I was like, I was somewhat going there because I didn't want to get into fights, but I wanted the adrenaline of a minor concussion. and there was something pagan about all these goblin-looking people dancing in a circle to other people who sound like goblins, and it felt like we were the descendants of pagans, and our little dance and getting hits okay because it's out of love rather than out of fear. Like many people in that scene were coming from abusive home lives, and we were trying to get away from screaming and violence, but we were getting away from it by being with screaming, violent people who were willing to at least pick us up and hear our pains.
Yeah. That's where karate helped me too. It's like anything that's movement, anything that's like redirecting your energy in a positive way. Like, you can, if you know that people are there to help you through your process, like in karate, like at least you know how to learn how to pull your punches.
Yeah, and for the people who are thinking about gaslighting Alyssa now, she knows karate. Like,
4 belts away from black.
Like, they make fun of you for something you say in here, and you like...
Yes, I'm Asian. I do know how to do karate, but not because I'm Asian.
You drop swipe their heel. So...
It's a whole thing.
Music, dance being catharsis.
Yeah.
What
Music
about
is cathartic.
you haven't said nothing about your catharsis.
Your catharsis.
Oh, yeah.
How does your catharsis manifest?
Through both dance and music. Like I remember like the album that helped me get through the pandemic was actually Mac Miller's last album, his posthumous album, Circles, and just like all those songs, you know, like spoke to like him from the afterlife. It felt like him speaking from the afterlife to us, being like, it's okay, you know, like. And he's a man that went through a lot of his own demons, and to hear him sing about that, like authentically and real, like, and I sing a lot of those songs like today, like I don't know, on a bad day. On bad days, like I have a playlist of songs that I'll, you know, play to the emotion of, or if I need a maneuver out of an emotion, I'll play songs.
Dude, your song with Camping, Impending Bloom, like, I like how deep and heavy it is, but it's just got such a groove where it's like, I wish my depression had a killer beat like that and were that eloquently spoken. And I feel like that's one of the things I love about your music, is that it's coming from the heart, and it's not only you feeling heard yourself, you're saying other things that like I could not articulate my emotions that well and that rhythmically.
Something that just jumping off into what you're saying is I actually sometimes think about like, oh, what's the soundtrack to my life right now, or I have like film music whenever I'm thinking. So like I do a little ditty or like I do a little tune, but sometimes I don't want shit to go the way that it's going, so I do listen to, like, I need to listen to like different music. Like I need to listen to like hype up jazz, or like I need to calm down, so I pick a different soundtrack to my life.
Yeah.
Like, you just actively play something and like, so that's really cool.
Like I'll put on like Kendrick's I, you know, you know, I love myself, you know.
Well, imagine how rough
that was fire.
If I gotta get some get some like love back into me, you know, if I'm feeling like real down and I gotta get hyped up on something, then I'll play that.
I use Alessia Cara's Okay.
Well, think about this. Music's awesome now because we can, like, at will. I have a playlist for every emotion and situation I could possibly be in. But, like, music in the 1600s, like, I used to think about, like, music about if you were pissed off if you were pissed off in the 40s, you had Mr. Sandman, or maybe someone had a Woody Guthrie, or like,
where's my sheet notes?
Here, or like bluesy B-side, like something that Phil would play. But like 1600s, it's like, well, I'm gonna go down to the local parlor and hope the guy with a fiddle knows how to tune it.
You know, they're used to, it's funny that you say that. Like, yes, I do a lot of blues, but considering I would never actually put one of them as my soundtrack. As
poser.
Like there are tons that are beautiful and that I've used at like as like soundtracks for an era of my time, but not by choice, but by just reflection of the time that I've spent doing what. There is one blues album that like I would consider to be from the age of 19 to about 22 that was like my soundtrack for that year. But like right now, like what I listen to the most to get me out of like my like funk is funk.
I love funk. Funk's so great.
Like there's this one.
Before we go on a funk tangent, I know y'all are music and artists, but I feel the VH1 episode getting birthed inside of this. So I'm gonna bring it back to the to the late 1600s.
Yeah.
That's what white people. I assume.
The hundreds?
Yeah, that's what white people called every time up until Martin Luther King. I feel like that's just that the white people are like, wait, actions have consequences. So, late 1600s. Theophilus Bonnet, Phil, it's right in the middle of the name. Theophilus Bonnet drew a connection between mania and melancholy. He called the condition manico-melancholis, which is the name of my favorite bipolar Roman general.
Honestly, great.
Yeah, he rewards his troops for 7 days, and then on the 9th day he stumbles out of the tent crying, goes, "Do you really care about me?"
Mania and melancholy, the M&Ms.
The M&Ms.
The M&Ms.
Make way for Sir Manico-Melancholis. Alright, back to the 1600s. Before Bonnet, mania and depression weren't viewed as the same disorder. Making them different aspects of the same condition was a significant step forward. And where did Bonnet get his experience from? From performing 3,000 autopsies.
Damn.
Ooh.
How do you study a mental disorder from dead people? That was where I'm like, he wasn't seeing them alive. He was seeing them like after the fact. Was he making up elaborate backstories based on the cause of death? The only thing I could think of is that he was, if their deaths were the direct or indirect result of a manic or depressed episode. Then it's just like, yeah, this guy thought he could be CEO despite being a bum.
I wonder how that tracked. Like,
yeah.
This guy was sad when he died.
This guy thought he could fly.
Well, let's give him a little bit more credit. Maybe he cut them open and he like.
It's the same.
Well, I mean, you already said it yourself.
He pulls out the coin in their brain that says bipolar.
Oh.
You already said it yourself. He did by autopsy. So like, let's imagine for a moment that we got two dead people on a slab right in front of us. Let's imagine this. Okay?
It's like when
one story for one man saying like, oh, he was sad and tried to kill his wife and then him. Right, we got that. And police came in and shot him. This guy was so happy, he thought he could be the bus driver and took over the bus, and so the police officer shot him.
So like the
and
thing that
same thing.
And
this guy put it all on black.
And so maybe he started with cutting open their heads.
I feel like the only reason that you would connect the manic and the melancholy is like you see somebody in their regular life, they've been so sad so long, and then he's the guy that jumps off a building because he thinks he can fly, because they're like, oh, these things don't match up.
Or the inverse, the guy who thinks he's awesome the whole day, and then on day 8 it's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like, oh, this guy died and he was so happy. What the heck happened? Like, yeah. So maybe that's how. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know.
And that was where I'm like,
giving her the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I'm sure there was some reason behind that.
Yeah, but I was just like,
how are you connecting?
So you're making a big breakthrough, but you're studying the least accurate source.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, what if he cut open their heads and he looked at their brains and then he was like, oh, they're both the same.
I know, but you did that 300 times, like.
Hey man, you need to make sure.
3,000.
Sure.
3,000.
Oh,
that's a lot of bodies.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's not the one killing them.
Yeah, you know what?
You
know what? All small intestines look the same to me these days.
How in fact did he have access to these bodies?
Okay, so it was the late 1600s. So
many bodies.
Well, it's not like they had X-rays or So one of the big things was like dissecting corpses, learning like, that's what the femur's connected to. Or it's like, hey, what's this thing do? And there was a whole like, this could be a whole other podcast. Other podcasts have done episodes on this of like doctors trying to get bodies to study.
Oh yeah, it was.
But they were doing to study anatomy, not not the finer nuances of a living brain.
Yeah. When did they figure out that we don't have 4 humors in our body to regulate all of our emotions?
I don't know.
That
was the subject of a different episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the 1700s was an uneventful century for bipolar research. I'm sure there were plenty of things making bipolar people feel worse in the 1700s.
Yeah.
Can't think of any off the top of my head. 1851. What's considered the first documented case of bipolar disorder is documented under the name La Folie Circulaire, which translates to circular insanity. A great insult for a fat, crazy person.
Circular insanity. It's a very rounded experience.
I'm gonna hear some comedian claim it as an original joke at the Improv in a month.
That's funny.
Also, the genetic connection in bipolar disorder is noted for the first time.
Okay.
Like, at least some progress on something was made in the 1850s.
Yeah, it doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Wow, it only took like 200 years. 800 and something.
Yeah, it only took 230 years for us to go, there's more to this.
You're like, your dad was kind of... Your mom was kind of... This is reminding me of something.
Write that down.
1895, German psychiatrist Emil Kraepelin became the first to distinguish manic depression, what we know now as bipolar disorder. An illness separate from dementia. That's got to be fun for y'all. It's like, see, we're not like those people. We're the better ones who are humans.
Just really quickly, bipolar, if it gets really bad, you can experience psychosis.
Yeah.
So there's...
Yeah, that's
the whole thing.
And that was another thing, like, the research is, like, if you don't treat mental illness at a certain point, it's going to become, like, 5 others. And that's kind of one of the inspirations for this is, like, you treat depression when you're young, you don't get alcoholism in your 20s. So, around the same time, psychodynamic theory and psychoanalysis, the type of psychotherapy based on theory, were also developed. 1921, Sigmund Freud's research theorized that mental illness was the result of societal pressures suppressing the desires of individuals. Emil Kraepelin's research was taking him in a different direction, which found that mental illness was caused by biological factors. Many in the medical community believe mental illness was first seriously studied by Kraepelin. Still, in 1921, he published Manic Depressive Insanity and Paranoia. This book is one of the first distinctions between bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which at the time were known as manic depressive and praecox. Praecox doesn't sound like a mental disorder. It sounds and is spelled like an Irish term for an STD.
Wait, how's it spelled?
Praecox? Praecox. Like
prank.
Yeah.
Like then the last name Cox.
He's got a case of praecox.
Praecox.
Pray for his cock.
Damn.
1950s, German psychiatrist Karl Leonard. I'm sure he did nothing wrong in the 40s. Or the 30s.
Was he a Nazi?
After our first episode, any German who was alive during that time deserves a little bit of, you're alive and you didn't have your legs broken.
They were
At the very least.
Here.
Yeah, your legs, you didn't flee, so they weren't after you.
Yeah.
They wanted to figure people out, but not for good reason.
Yeah. Each of them get a little bit of a side eye.
It's the 50s. Germany got their path.
I mean, shit, you could do that now. Still, don't
But
we have neo-Nazis
you
now?
seem different.
So
Like-
They should keep
that
it
is the
away.
problem with German mental health. They make a lot of discoveries, but then it's just like
Why are you discovering
three
this?
genocides for one country is a little much.
I think it's too
So-
many.
Karl Leonard introduced a professional.
The one was just... What do you
Hey,
mean?
look, everybody gets one.
No.
America got one. Nobody talks about it that much.
Yeah, but we
Oh,
got
you
the
mean
we got the one that had the most real estate.
Exactly.
Germany
I mean,
did 2 and funded a 3rd, and they didn't get any extra land in the long run.
All I'm saying is almost every other country got one, and everybody was like, okay, you got the one.
Yeah.
Don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Germany went over their quota with 2.
Oh,
Can we sell weapons? Can we sell weapons to the victims of our first one?
Yeah.
And so, I'm just
Or what?
saying, if they had,
No, that was their second one because they did their first one in Africa. Sorry, I'm getting the German genocides mixed up.
I'm telling you, if they had just kept it with one, and they had only like, I'm black.
What?
This is a terrible statement. But here's the truth. If they had kept their genocide to just Africa, nobody would be mad at
Damn,
Germany.
that's
Yeah,
sad.
that's why you're allowed to get away with it in Sudan.
That that's what I'm saying. I'm like, if they had just but you know what their problem was? They started killing other white people.
Yeah, it was.
And then everybody was like,
Like,
wait,
whoa,
wait,
whoa,
wait,
whoa,
wait.
whoa.
That's a bit much,
When it-
buddy.
When it's
He looks like you, bro.
when it's brown on brown, America's kind of like 2 birds with 1 stone. We can anyway.
What was Carl Leonard all
So
about?
thank you. Carl Leonard introduced a professional classification system for mental disorders. 1980, the term bipolar appears in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 3rd revision, aka the DSM-3. The term represents the duality of depression and mania. 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th revision, aka the DSM-5, was released. The DSM-5 introduced the spectrum of bipolar episode types. 1. Manic episode. 2. Major depressive episode. 3. Hypomanic episode. 4. Mixed episode. It also introduced guidelines for treatment that are still used today. There are 3 types of bipolar disorder recognized today. All these definitions come from the National Institute of Mental Health.
We didn't even get into mixed episodes. Those are crazy.
Bipolar 1 is defined by manic episodes that last at least 7 days, nearly every day for most of the day, or by manic symptoms that are so severe the person needs immediate medical care. Usually depressive episodes occur as well, typically lasting at least 2 weeks. Episodes of depression with mixed features, having depressive symptoms and manic symptoms at the same time, are also possible. Experiencing 4 or more episodes of mania or depression within 1 year is called rapid cycling. I want to hear your take on that, because you said you cycle through through 3 weeks, and there's 52 weeks, so that's more than. So you're a rapid cycler.
Now I gotta go check in with my therapist to confirm. Yeah.
I don't track my cycles that well because I don't know exactly how it is. This is a rough estimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it's probably not exact of like 2 more days.
Yeah.
I wish it was accurate to be like, okay, I'm not gonna schedule myself for anything.
There's
like,
gonna be
that
guys
needs
listening to this
all this
going,
stuff.
wait,
Right.
bipolarity is like periods. It's not always the exact same.
No, it's not. It's not.
Bipolar 2 is defined by a pattern of depressive episodes and hypomanic episodes. The hypomanic episodes are less severe than the manic episodes in bipolar 1. The 3rd type recognized is cyclothematic disorder, aka cyclothymia. Probably pronounced that wrong, complain in the comments. Which is defined by reoccurring hypomanic and depressive symptoms that are not intense enough or do not last long enough to qualify as a hypomanic or depressive episode. In the occasional case where someone's symptoms don't exactly match any of those 3 descriptions, they are often, quote, referred to as other specified and unspecified bipolar and related disorders. 2019, the current stat for the number of adults dealing with bipolar disorder in the U.S. was 3.3 million, and 2 of them are sitting with us. Worldwide, 40 million people deal with bipolar disorder. 85% have severe cases, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. Less than 40% of people with bipolar disorder receive what's considered, quote, minimally adequate treatment.
Yeah. If they catch you at all, like it's really tough to like find us sometimes.
as of 2022, does anyone want to guess the market size for bipolar treatment?
Market size.
Yeah,
Don't
how
have
much
money
How
just
much
made off
money
of us?
are people making off of you guys?
I mean, Seroquel was at least $400, like without insurance, so that's like almost.
I'm gonna put 15.8 billion.
Oh, billion.
I would say billion.
Yeah, 40.
Is this only in America?
Yeah, we're doing the market size. For,
Yeah. And how many million are diagnosed in the U.S.?
3.3 million.
3.3 million. So I'm gonna say, let's double that. Let's triple that. Actually, I'm gonna say $30 million.
I'm gonna go in like the 2 billion range, just to.
Oh yeah, my number's.
Alyssa's the closest.
Yeah.
Oh.
The market for bipolar drugs and treatment is valued at 5.2 billion a year.
5.
Just
over.
a year.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so for the price of 2 NBA teams, you could be the kingpin of bipolar treatment.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks
Listen,
Yeah.
we can help all of these people. Or
Or.
Look,
I can hang out with Beyonce because I have 2 teams.
look. From what I remember, the Brooklyn Nets don't really make that much.
No, I'm talking about this was like the average. Yeah, the Lakers are going to cost more, and the Nets are probably going to get a tax write-off.
I'm just saying.
Wow, I was super low, like super low balling it.
Yeah, you were.
I'm sorry.
said
I
10,
thought
you
we.
said 10
I thought we.
You assume
yeah.
America cares about helping
No,
people.
yeah, no. I assumed that we had affordable health care. I apologize.
No.
Yeah, I highly
Why treat when you
apologize.
can price gouge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So-
I've multiplied
well,
it by like
by-
$500.
In 10 years, by 2032, this is expected to grow to 7.5 billion. Americans consume 66% of the world's psychological drugs, but are only 5% of the world's population.
You know.
America's the world's rich, pill-popping roommate with violent episodes and friends that can get away with murder.
Damn.
Yep.
Where's
So-
the lie?
That is where we are at today.
Mm-hmm.
Having heard the history of bipolar research, what's something you learned today that you wish you had known sooner? That could have helped you in your journey? Whether it be like a stat or just something silly where it's like, oh, it's... Because a lot of times with mental health, we think it begins with us when it's like, no, it's other people have been dealing with it. They just didn't have the words or the avenues to be heard.
I think the coolest thing that I found that you mentioned was that people have been using lithium since 380, 300 BC.
300 BC.
BC, so before Jesus. 300
Yeah,
before
the-
Jesus.
Lithium,
wild.
lithium was
Before
helping people
Christ,
before
yeah.
Jesus was.
Wow, that's wild. 75 years before the fall, or no, after the fall of the Roman Empire.
Oh, that
Ish.
if you
Depending on who you
yeah,
ask.
yeah, this you're
Depending on who
you're
you
bringing up a very hot button issue for someone with
Historians. Yeah,
like
but-
I had to Google those NBA stats, but I'm gonna quote at least 3 different sources for when
Yeah,
the empire
Roman-
fell.
Yeah, may or may not have fallen, but considering there's it's a whole thing. Yeah, people have been dealing with this forever, and it's nice to know that.
Yeah, I'd say that too. I'd say that I'm actually quite flattered and a little humbled. That they've been doing research on this this long, that it was like even the combination between melancholia and mania melancholia in the 1600s was the situation. I thought that was unique, and it was fascinating to just like learn that aspect of it. I actually did know that melancholia, being traced to depression primarily. I was aware of that fact because of Alex Liu's info when he had interviewed you about it. That's part of his research on depression.
Yeah.
And so to see that connected with the other side of it, mania, and it was just 2 aspects to me, like, oh wait, there is an association with it, and seeing it develop, it makes sense.
Where it's just like
seeing how the history, it makes sense how it came about today, and most scientific research has been, for all the medicines that we take today, it has been a lot more recent within the past 100 to 200 years.
Yeah.
So it tracks. It makes sense. At the same time, like I wish there was, with that understanding, a little bit better representation in media would have been nice.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah,
I
and that's
mean, I
also
don't
on like
think- People find
actors,
their way.
and that's
Yeah.
also on like actors and writers, because us being involved in the entertainment industry, there's so many people involved in that, and I think that's also on the mix of sometimes actors can't always say I want to do this character differently, and sometimes, but I feel like that's on artists, on writers, on actors going
Right.
like, hey, maybe we should have a bipolar person play the bipolar character.
Like,
Yeah.
even if you have that, it's tough to like notice bipolarism like as it's happening, because you've been in the same state for like a couple weeks. It's hard to portray
Yeah.
in a
When you have
30-minute
five,
segment,
when you
in
have
an
5
hour-long
minutes.
segment.
Yeah.
Like it's tough to like actually. It's so funny. You were there for this moment, but there was somebody that we were like at a bar with after the mic that we all go to, that we were just kind of casually talking about. I was like, oh, we're in this whatever state today, or like bipolar this, bipolar that, and then he was like, wait, you guys have bipolar, but you guys don't act crazy.
Oh,
Who?
And,
lovely.
oh, you know who.
I-
You can assume who.
Okay.
But we're just like funny enough, you're surrounded by bipolar people in this moment. There were 3
Yeah.
people right around you.
Yeah.
It's just like, have you ever been bum rushed by a group of bipolar people?
Yeah,
Like,
we're all around.
Would
bro.
you like to?
But like it's one of those things where you can't notice it unless it's in one of the extremes that people would notice. Actually, a lot of bipolar 2 people, because their stuff is like their range is actually shifted lower from my diagram. They're mostly depressive most of the time, and then their hypomania kind of reaches towards what regular people would say is normal.
Yeah, and that's the thing is with the episode, because I really on some aspect of when people catch me in like a 2-hour window where I'm not openly miserable, where they're like, oh, you're so calm and collected, and they're like saying I'm like my mom, and I'm like, and it's like going, oh yeah, I live with it, and I know how to cope with it, because I use a lot of like acting techniques, knowing that I may go into a social situation manic and feeling good, and then halfway there be like, I want to hide. I don't want to be around the humans. And also like as far as like when they were talking about consequences of their actions, if my manic moments lasted days, oh my god, I at least only have to worry about like in 2 hours I'm gonna have an idea of whether or not I still think this was a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice versa. Whereas I can't imagine the stress of like being in that same tunnel vision for a week. And I cycle through my emotions a little quicker, and that's where I'm like, I'm more of the cartoon stereotype of bipolar, because coffee or a smoke, I'm going to be in a very momentarily different mood. And I feel like also as performers, like, do you ever feel like you have to just incorporate performing tools to get through social scenarios, because it's easier to play the part than to be genuine?
Oh,
yeah.
Great question. Because I definitely feel that. I definitely relate to that. I think I do have to bring in like I have to turn my acting brain on in certain situations where I know my mood has swung opposite of what is necessary in a specific environment, and I have to be like, okay, what would like what would the network in this networking environment that I'm in, and if I'm like too hyped right now, how would they approach people, and how would people be comfortable with me approaching them? What would that state be like, and how have I seen it, played before, and then like let me get into that mindset, and like, okay, what was a version of me that was cool, that was like still fun, but could keep it chill enough where I didn't scare people off, and let me play into that character. And once I'm in the shoes of like that character, I'm in the shoes. Like I'm in the zone now. I know what part I have to play. And so I do relate to that. Like I do bring in like acting techniques for those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, like I'm so lucky I worked with poetry sensei Paul Maybon, who's an actor, because he was teaching me stuff that I didn't really like use in as effectively then, but he saw that I was feeling depression, and that we had to get through these blitz shows doing poems, and he saw the comedian in me long before I did. And just, I still channel the same as like eye contact, inflection point, changing my vocabulary, and just like, oh, it's just the part I gotta play, because pretending I'm okay is easier than actually trying to find a common ground of being real with where I'm at with these other people. And I feel so bad for you who don't have performance backgrounds and struggle with mental illness, because we can at least seen it in our head. Of,
Right.
Right. I don't know what everybody else's or people with bipolar's experience with this is, but like, if I'm in an up, and usually I am, but like, I will go through 1,000,001 like lightning fast scenarios in my head, and then
Doctor
and then, like,
Strange in it.
think everything, just basically like that's the
Shikamaru.
image. You're like, okay, what are the other
Yeah.
the other situations, and then it'll happen in the middle of a thing where I'm just like, I have to shift my tone up and my inflection up so that they're not going to be pissed at the thing that I say.
Yeah.
Because this thing will piss you off if I say it in a very different tone.
Yeah.
But this is like all in the span of like 3 sentences, or it's just like, you know what, you really pissed me off, but this is what we're going to do about it. Like,
that is such a pro performer move of knowing, if I say this in the wrong inflection point, they're going to think I want to kill them.
Yeah. Or something. It's just like I have my own experiences with my family coming from such a, restrained, that's that Catholic guilt again, but like the repressed.
Yeah,
side
it's
of us,
suppress
or-
your emotions for the sake of our false sense of contentment.
Yeah.
So I have to always worry about tone. Sometimes it's not even like if I'm a recovering people pleaser, put that on a shirt. But it's just like I have to not only monitor what I say, but the tone that I say it.
Yeah.
So it's
because you can
like,
set other people off, and dealing with people who have anger issues, whether they address it or not. I've dealt with that where I just was slammed by my depression, or dealing with like other mental health stuff where I'm like, I'm here. I'm not trying to hurt myself. Can that just be enough for now? And then my tone, or me not wanting to make eye contact or something, when it's me just trying to like stay present, will rub them the wrong way and set them off, and then it makes my situation worse, because now I have to deal with this person, and only one of us is going to acknowledge the mental and emotional aspect. So acting happy and acting fine is the more safe solution than being real with people.
Yeah. And I'll say this, for at least from my process with dealing with those emotions on the spot and having to maneuver them, it's not so much a suppressing of emotions as it is a like accepting of the emotions and adjusting accordingly. So it's a two-part thing. It's a nuanced like navigation of those emotions. And Tom Wooten of Bipolar Advantage, he's a corporate educator and founder of Bipolar Advantage, which I'd like to give a shout out, because that resource has helped me like look.
Find that.
Yeah. I'll share. I shared it with the group before once. It was bipolar in order instead of bipolar disorder.
Okay, yes.
It's under the same. It's a program under Bipolar Advantage as a whole. But for him, he had a great quote in one of his lectures where he was like, are people like avoidant of bipolar people because they dislike us, or do they just or are we as bipolar folks acting in a way that is abnormal to the average person? And if it's just a behavior, they don't know what's going on in their head. They don't. I could be having a meltdown right now, but is my behavior reflecting that, and is that what people get worried about? Is the behavior of it. So if I can accept internally what my emotions or what my mindset is, and just behave in a way that like won't scare people, that will actually like add to the environment, then can I do that? Or can my emotions in a moment influence a behavior that I can like work the crowd in? That comes with artistry, that comes with performing. Like can my heightened activated mood sense like play into something, into an energy that's more productive? So it could be like corralling people to get more hyped at a show. You know, like if I'm feeling activated. If I'm depressed, maybe can I bring the audience in? Like, I just want to talk to y'all real quick, and or just trying to like find ways
being transparent with people to a certain extent can really help out, because otherwise they just think you're being weird.
Yeah.
Like with my students, I did one thing where I was having a really terrible week, but like they've known me in my upload for like a lot of the time that I'm with them. And I was just like, hey guys, just so you guys know.
Someone's having a worse time than us.
Yeah. So I was like, just so you guys know, I'm having kind of a crazy week. So hopefully this isn't, I'm not going to try to let that get in the way of working with you guys. But just so you know, I'm a little bit sensitive today. Mm-hmm. So that's the whole thing.
And that takes strength to be open with people. And having talked with all of you about what you're dealing with, I think the scariest thing people have with bipolar disorder is what they think it's actually like. Mm-hmm. The misrepresentations in shows and movies. And I think they're more worried about the switch that comes with the emotion, and that they're going to have to be the ones to deal with it, when it's like, no, we're the ones dealing with your misunderstanding because you throw all these assumptions onto it, rather than it seems very human to be like, I'm having a good week, I'm having a bad week. Whereas I'd be like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I think like neurodivergent people, we have to be so much more self-aware and considerate, because if something goes wrong, us being open, we're going to be the one who, rather than, because it's easier to say someone's mentally ill than the neurotypical person, self-identified neurotypical, is being a shitty person.
It's interesting that you, there's this debate actually, how to categorize neurodivergency within the bipolar side of things, because it's like, somebody described it to me once as, neurodivergent is like, oh, if you have an engine, there's part of the engine that may be broken, right? So we have to supplement whatever that is, right? But bipolar is like, oh, the engine works, it's just slow, or it could get speed up sometimes. So everything's kind of working fine. So it's like, is it with none of our functions, our functions are functioning in a normal way, it just needs help or something like that. It's an interesting thing.
That's why
I would still personally call it neurodivergency, because it's not neurotypical.
Yeah, and I think a lot of with neurodivergency is, if you think you're neurodivergent, you probably
are.
Yeah, and neurotypical, when I'm saying that, it's more so just the people who are in the mindset of they are the standard. And I view brains as hard drives, and our mental disorders are softwares, and some of these conditions come with perks, like increased empathy, self-expression. Whereas with other people, they don't have that aching need to express, but also limits the scope of emotions they're experiencing. And evolution, humans have been around for 300,000 years, 200,000 years, if you really want to get into the finer points. But the point being is that all these things are survival strategies, and that's where we're talking about the biological factors of, hey, it's a mixed bag. Some of it's learned from society, like Freud, but others are biological components, because there are things I do mentally and emotionally that are so in line with my parents that even being conscious of these behaviors, I will drift towards them for a variety of just neurochemical factors. And finding that right balance of how much is this influenced by society and how much is biological.
Right.
And I always am scared about the biological, because that's what is used to screw over a lot of neurodivergent people seeking help, is it's all in your head. Whereas a lot of times we're fine, it's just there are outside factors and inconsiderate people that put us in a survival state.
Right.
And that's why I like going through all the history, because it's hey, we're just trying to get help. And it's these misnomers, the religions, the scientists that, where's that practical gray area?
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me experiencing bipolar is you shouldn't be afraid of your emotions, you should just work with them, because nobody should be ashamed for feeling the feeling. You know? And the wild thing about being on mood stabilizers is you feel these feelings for a reason. if I am sad, there's a reason for that, whether it be chemical or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm angry, it's usually just like a check engine light to see, there's either an injustice. The number one thing that I take away from having bipolar is understanding that emotions, shouldn't be shameful. Like, all of these emotions that you feel are for a reason, Sadness might allow you to think about things more and to analyze things, or just wake you up to a couple things. Anger is just, a check engine light to see maybe there's some injustice happening. Like, maybe there's an injustice that you feel like is unfair. It's a reaction to unfairness. So the thing that I found after being on mood stabilizers is there's a lot of things that I could have stopped or like didn't have to stay in for a long time because I wasn't feeling my full range of emotions. I was like, oh, if I knew that I wasn't fine with just being fine, maybe I wouldn't have stayed in certain relationships longer than I should have, or something like that. There's all of these emotions should be felt, and they should give their space. People get to regulate them, at a certain point, but it's not bad to feel.
Mm-hmm. And that, for our audience, that is a negative side effect of medication, is you might stay with the same toxic partner. Thinking like, no, they're not awful. I'm just feeling down.
Yeah.
It's fine. They're not hitting me. They're fine.
So let's get to you, Alex. As we were talking about all these like manic episodes, I was like thinking about fun times, and I'm like, was he having a good time, or was he just being manic? Like, this,
and it could be both.
This photo, was this a manic episode?
Wait, let me see this one.
Your background.
Oh.
Because I promise you,
Could be
that
both.
smile on my face had nothing to do with ketamine.
It was both, man. It was both.
It could be both.
Most of the times, if I am having a good time, it's also maybe because I'm manic, or which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, I'm gonna
happy
pretend you
because
were
I was
having fun
manic?
because of me, not because your brain was like, you're crazy. You're having fun with him.
No, it's probably both.
It's both. One, I was happy, and then the happy triggered mania, or maybe I was manic, and therefore I was happy.
Yeah. If I'm depressed, you won't see me. I just won't be around.
Right?
Yeah.
You should be like, Shane, do you have an extra weighted blanket I can hide under?
Yeah, but which plays to, what I wanted to say about bipolar at the end of the day. It is like a full expression of the human experience for those who have it. It is both a blessing and a curse, as bipolar as you can freaking put it. And that's a gift to have, as much as it is a burden. And there's utility in it, because we're the conduits of such unadulterated emotion. And we provide outlook and perspectives, and we're able to speak to a level that a lot of people might be uncomfortable to speak at. Or they haven't had the time to really sit with those emotions as much as we've had to, just having to regulate them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, for my fellow bipolar folks, embrace it, embrace that shit. Take notice, be aware of it, and see what utility that you have to the world, when you are someone who experiences it, which is why I want to plug Bipolar Advantage and their program Bipolar in Order. Instead of looking at this as a disorder, what is it like, and what beauty could your life be enhanced with if you were to have it in your order, in your choice of order? Because what you were speaking to, that each kind of neurodivergency, shares some kind of utility to society if we allow it to, instead of it being something we should shun, or that we as the people who experience it have to suppress. No, there's a gift that's waiting to be given if we were to embrace it and share it with the world what it does. Yeah.
Well said. I think that is a great note to end on, and I'm so glad we have articulate people like you both who can explain to people who don't deal with bipolar disorder what it's like and how we can better help and understand it. How can people find more of you both? Like social media, where can people find y'all at?
You want to take this? I just spoke, so I'll toss it over to you.
My name is Alyssa Aguilos. You can find me on Instagram at Dream It Do It Media. There's short films and more insights into film on that side. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming again, but if I am, it's going to be Books and Boba on Twitch. Books, the letter N, Boba, where I used to pair books with boba drinks and stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm. And you can find me at Sun Luu Official, SUNLUU Official, on all social medias. You can also find that through my email, sunluuofficial@gmail.com. If you want to reach out, if you have any questions about bipolar, if you just want to talk, chat, like if there's something that I said or something that we said that you felt, feel free to contact me and you can discuss more about it. That's, on my Instagram and, Linktree, also at Sun Luu Official, you can find my debut album, Heirloom, spoken word album speaking on my experiences with mental health and through my culture. That's where you can just take time to enjoy, musical spoken word from my lens. That's where my website is where you'll find all my upcoming shows and workshops as well.
And lastly, if you do like music, film, and poetry, I do have an event, Twilight Showcase and Art Fest, where I try to give a platform to emerging artists and filmmakers. That's coming up in October this year. Submissions will open up in June 15th.
You heard it from them, folks. Our sources for today's episode: Healthline, the National Institute of Mental Health, GM Insights, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, as well as Healthline and Forbes. There's probably one or two I'm forgetting. We'll post it all on the social medias after this episode. So, thank you so much for coming out. I'm Shane Kenny, comedy on all social media. You've been listening to It's Killing Me. I want to give a big thanks to our producer, Phil. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.